Welcome to the Popcorn Parenting Podcast, the show about festive films and family faith, or it is at this time of year. My name is James Cary, I'm a writer, I live in the UK, and over in America is my friend Nate Morgan Locke. Hello, Nate.
Hello, James. I'm excited today to talk about Christmas movies.
So this is a bumper Christmas edition. In this episode, part one, we're going to talk about the hallmarks of Christmas movies and what's Christian about them. And then we're going to talk about a Muppet Christmas Carol. And then in part two, we're going to talk about Elf, Home Alone, Charlie Brown Christmas and The Snowman. But the big question is this, Nate.
Yep.
What is a Christmas movie? And I'm asking you not just as a dad, but a reformed mythologist, but mostly as a dad.
Well, with my reformed mythologist cap on and my dad trousers, I can conclusively say that I think there are two basic principles you need to have a Christmas movie. The magic and the momentum. Ooh. But before we get to that, it's cool, isn't it? Because they both begin with the same letter.
That's brilliant.
The first thing to say, though, is obviously Christmas. What's the real meaning of Christmas, James? The real meaning of Christmas is that Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem. Emmanuel, God with us. The Word becomes flesh. God incarnate. All of that kind of actual history when myth became fact in the first century. So that is what you have to say from the outset, that is what Christmas is about. But Christmas movies are built on that foundation. They aren't actually... If someone says it's a Christmas movie and it's the Nativity, I'm like, I'm not really... I think that's just Christmas.
Right.
If it's going to be an actual Christmas movie, it needs to have the incarnation of the Word of God as the foundation on which it's built. So it has to assume that Jesus Christ was born into the world in the town of David and the shepherds and the angels and the wise men and all that sort of stuff. So that has to be assumed. But then once you've got that foundation, you then build a Christmas movie with these two elements. Which I think...
go on. So they are magic and momentum. What's the magic?
People said it's a Christmas miracle, right? That's become like a bit of a...
it's a Christmas miracle.
It's a Christmas miracle because Christmas movies, even though they aren't necessarily appealing to the sort of supernatural, paranormal, outside of the ordinary world of the spiritual, they can't resist magic and sparkle. They absolutely... Everything has to be sort of glistening. There's got to be a sort of glittery feeling. And that is based upon the actual truth of Christmas.
Yeah.
But of course, because the movie isn't Christmas, it's a Christmas movie, it then uses the same feeling, that same sensation of the glory of the actual Christmas, and then has to kind of remind you of it with its magic, sparkle, and shining, glistening, shimmering wonder.
I mean, you even get that in Christmas specials of sitcoms, which are kind of little movies in some way or another. But if it's a Christmas special of a sitcom, or if it's a Christmas movie, you get to have a supernatural event quite late on in the movie, which you otherwise wouldn't do. They're not allowed. Yeah. You can't have the gods come down and fix stuff in what's called the Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
That's proper movie cheating.
Yeah.
And you would normally feel extremely shortchanged. But if it's Christmas, there's a Christmas miracle.
That's it.
And something that even a sitcom which is very literal and not supernatural, you'd be allowed something that is clearly physically impossible to happen at the key moment of your sitcom because it's Christmas.
Because it's Christmas. So the logic marries magic, you see. That's what's so brilliant about it.
The logic marries magic. Oh, my goodness.
Magic.
You are on fire, my friend.
Well, I came up with that with a phrase to do with magic and logic when I was thinking about ethics. And, you know, you can't get ethics from logic without magic. So that whole thing about you can't get an ought from an is, you
Okay.
know, that whole kind of argument. So they always end up being kind of magicians. There's always like a little card trick in the middle of that kind of, oh, you can have morals without God kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Yeah.
But so
Understood.
what's great about Christmas movies is because they say this is, because it's Christmas, we can say this. And as Christians, we want to go, yeah, that's because Christmas is true, because actually we do live in that world of Christmas. This is the world in which we live. And so wonderful things and magical things can happen. And one thing I've noticed this year in particular, in watching far too many Christmas movies, is how many times in Christmas movies people fly over towns and houses and cities. It's
Wow.
genuinely amazing. And I was thinking, why does that happen so often that at the time of Christmas, you've got this sensation of kind of zooming over the tops of the chimneys
Yeah.
and what's all that about, James? Why do we have, now I've got a view on this, but why is there this sense that, well, you should sort of float over the community if it's Christmas time?
Well, I guess you've got the angel, and people think angels have wings, which theoretically they don't. Cherubim and seraphim, I think, have wings, but let's not get into the angelology. But there's also the star. There's just that kind of ethereal heavenliness looking down over stuff, isn't there, I guess?
Yeah, and that's what I think it is. I think there's something where Christmas demands that we look up, and everyone looks up. And what would you see above? Like,
Yeah.
we look to the heavens, but also this idea that there's something moving over. There's something sort of passing over. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
That
What
over
could
the
be more
community.
Christmassy than the angel of death?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, there you go. But you've got it in the story with Herod and the infanticide, the massacre of the innocents.
Yeah.
And where does the first Christian family go? It goes to Egypt.
Yeah.
Flight to Egypt.
And if you want any movie to have a sense of impending doom or something, you show the shadow, don't you, sort of going over the community, and then loads of people sort of looking up. It's only reaction shot. You don't actually get to see for a moment what it is. But Christmas is a time when that process of sort of passing over
Yeah.
is actually gloriously redemptive and wonderful and magical and exciting and life-giving. So, yeah, I think but so we'll pick that up, I think, as we go through some of the other ones. The second word I had was momentum. And this is because Christmas is all about anticipation. Or Advent, rather, is about the anticipation. And we only really watch Christmas movies during Advent. Because,
We do.
as you've told me before, once you get to midday on Christmas Day, no one wants to celebrate Christmas anymore.
Christmas is done.
That's it.
It's all over.
What do you mean 12 days? No, that's it. We're done now.
Well, this is the year I'm trying to do the 12 days.
Are you?
I'm trying to do Advent properly. I've actually given up bread for Advent.
Okay, I'm doing a no crisps till Christmas.
Oh, that's good, because that kind of slightly rhymes.
It sort of does.
Although
yeah.
my bread thing, A, it's obviously good for my blood sugar diet, but B, Bethlehem is the city of bread, the place of bread, and so I get to celebrate Bethlehem in a smug
it.
theological way.
That's
But let's
it.
not get too bogged down in that. Tell us about the momentum of
So
preparation.
momentum, yeah. So anticipation. This is all about the building suspense of Christmas because a baby's about to be born. And if you know any pregnant women, you'll know that sense of waiting and longing and hope and excitement and fear and trepidation and all that sort of stuff that's building up to the moment when the baby will be born. And you're never quite sure, is it going to be, and you can't really make plans because it's just going to happen and all that sort of stuff. So there is a sense in which Christmas movies almost demand a countdown within them, like a ticking clock or like the rehearsal up to the performance date. So there's always this kind of trajectory forwards that something is about to happen. And in one sense, yes, all stories have some kind of, inescapable eschatological dimension.
Yeah.
But you didn't pick up on that. I thought you were going to say, oh, that's a lot of long words, but there we go.
Okay, I'm terribly sorry. I was momentarily distracted.
No, it's all right. I just said inescapable eschatological dimension, by which I mean, of course,
Yeah.
that it's pointing forward to some future point when something big is going to happen. So eschaton is the last things, or the things that are at the end. And actually, the coming of the Lord, if you think about Advent, first Advent is Jesus sort of being born, but then the one we're in now is we're waiting for the second coming of Jesus. And so there's this point at which everything's going to come to a head, and we're going to kind of face this big excitement. And I think Christmas movies, which work really well, tie together that tension with Christmas morning. Okay. So often things in Christmas movies happen on Christmas Eve.
Yeah, definitely.
It's overnight, and then boom, something's going to be joyful and wonderful on Christmas morning. So, and I think that's what we feel, right? That's the thing I get most excited about. It's like, what's going to happen how many sleeps, and then the sleep will be broken and a brand new day, and Christmas is finally here and we can all celebrate. So it's the momentum of the movie often, and fairy stories do this as well. You get this in lots of fairy tales, sort of by the time the clock strikes midnight, or you're going to get something like on their 16th birthday, this is going to happen.
I mean, it's advice I give to people who are trying to write sitcoms, is that, have a ticking clock. Wherever possible, your hero needs to do X by 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Ideally, sitcom episodes take place within 24 to 48 hours. Okay. So 72 at a push. So if this isn't done by noon on Thursday, then this will happen.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a deadline. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's Christmas par excellence, isn't it? With a bit of magic along the way.
And the overnight thing, I think, is kind of crucial. There's something could happen during the night, which will
that's
then
interesting,
be
isn't it?
discovered.
We all go to sleep, and when we wake up, I guess we've been also conditioned with that with Father Christmas and waking up to presents and.
And I'm saying that the Father Christmas thing is based upon the inescapable eschatological dimension of Christmas itself.
Right.
The glorious day of the Lord.
I will be sure to explain that to my kids on Christmas morning.
That's it. Because I have quite vivid memories of feeling it was usually a football sock, just that was at the end of the bed, and this sort of half awake feeling that's. So you go to sleep and obviously that's empty. Yeah. And then kind of waking up, you're like, oh, it's there. He's been.
Yeah, I think that's true.
While I was sleeping.
I mean, we're not going to discuss whether you tell your kids about Father Christmas or not, but there is an element of wanting to believe. Yeah. And I think that's kind of, for me, one of the things about Christmas movies and why they are tapping into something so powerful and eternal, is because only the most hard-bitten, conscience-seared sociopath, atheist, does not want to believe in miracles. Yeah. The hope is so hard to extinguish, and Christmas gives you that. And as kids, we want to believe it. We want to believe that Father Christmas has come and given us presents. And that's just a really powerful myth that we want to be true. And actually, in a way, it is true.
Yeah, and the sense of I think while you're sleeping, that's what's so remarkable about it. So I don't know if you do this with your girls, but we all often, birthdays will usually have a kind of arrangement of gifts somewhere in the house, like a living room or the dining room or something, which wasn't there when they went to bed. Okay. And so that you get that same kind of, I came down and it was all, had all been prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think we have done a bit of that. And now I know why. But what are the other ways in which we're going to evaluate these movies?
So I'm going to give you another word, parallelomania,
Right.
which is seeing parallels between stories all the time, which I suffer from quite severely. I have been tested. It's come through positive. I am a parallelomaniac.
Okay.
And so...
I'm like that with people and faces. I'm always saying this person looks like that person.
Oh, okay.
I'm always the person in the room, and then everyone looks at me and just goes, "No," and I'm like, "Okay, well, I've seen a connection, so they do. I don't care whether you agree with me or not.
Yeah. So with this,
I don't need your approval. I don't need any of you." Sorry.
So we talked about this before, where all stories have their origin in the great true story, and that little episodes within that great story can have massive resonance and significance, and draw parallels between those and the stories of modern culture. And I think the best Christmas movies have very simple parallels with stories we find in the Bible. So they've got something in common with the great gospel story told from Genesis to Revelation. But the other thing is that they might be like little episodes or moments, people Jesus meets in the Gospels, or things that happen to kings in the Old Testament, or certain kind of particularly female figures in the Old Testament have quite distinct narrative structures attached to them. So I think this is something we should be encouraging our children to do. And when we get to these questions about, well, what are you going to say to your kids? The question is basically going to be, does that story remind you of anything in the Bible?
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing. Now, I must just say that you've got to be very careful, though, with Christmas movies, because the holiday movies is now crept in. Yeah. And could very easily mislead people into thinking they're watching a Christmas movie when it's actually just a holiday movie with no explicit reference to Christmas, and not built on that foundation of the original nativity of Jesus Christ. For example, 2017 Trolls Holiday Special, starring Justin Timberlake, Anna Kendrick, and James Corden, amongst others. It is, without doubt, the worst thing that you could ever let your children watch.
Oh, wow.
It would be better for you to give your child a bottle of vodka and some kitchen knives and encourage them to learn to juggle.
And every time they drop a knife, they need to drink.
From 2017, Trolls Holiday Special is so empty that it is a dry retch over the abyss.
Okay, well, I'm glad you've not.
So I wanted to get that off my chest, because I do think that you could easily be misled, because it says holiday and it's set at winter time, and there's people wearing woolly jumpers, which are all strange.
Also you then get this really non-specific holiday thing, and I love that. There's a website called TV Tropes. And it's just got a whole load of things that kind of exist on television or only on TV, which is like, non-specific religion kind of thing and all this kind of stuff. And for me, it wasn't quite a low point, but the latest Disney Plus Christmas holiday Lego Star Wars, where they celebrate Life Day.
Oh, yes.
And they basically, it's got Rey in it, and it's just jumping through a whole load of Star Wars movies. And this whole kind of Life Day thing, which is like, this isn't anything.
No.
This is completely... This is halfway between Thanksgiving and Christmas, which I know is a phenomenon that the Americans have to cope with, which we don't, because we don't have Thanksgiving in the UK. So, yeah, it just felt really empty.
It's coming. And I think the sense that we like celebrating, so let's just have celebration.
Yeah.
And let's just think about what excuses we can have to celebrate whatever.
While I have your attention just for a moment, let me just tell you about a crossover special podcast we did with the For Now We See podcast. And if you go on over to For Now We See, we'll put a link in the show notes. Nate and I are talking about Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse with our friends over at the For Now We See a podcast. And they talk about lots of movies and TV without so much of a kid's perspective. And we thought it would be fun to do a crossover episode with them. So if you want to go and have a listen to that, episode 32 of For Now We See. And now, back to popcorn parenting. We should jump into the fact that we've got 3 Christmas movies each, which we'll talk about in varying degrees of length. I think we've set the scene for it. We're going to push on through, and we're going to look at each of those 4 films, asking the 4 questions. Why did you pick this movie? What's the Christmas magic? Is there a Christmas countdown? And Bible story parallels. And Nate's going to kick us off with Muppet's Christmas Carol.
Yes, the reason I picked Muppet's Christmas Carol is fairly obvious, because it's hilarious and it's brilliant and it's a classic retelling, and it's got Michael Caine playing everything as straight as possible. It's got Gonzo as Charles Dickens working alongside the rat.
Yeah.
Which is something you don't get in enough films. You don't get the narrator on screen, sort of semi interacting with what's actually happening in the story, and
sort of breaking the fourth and the fifth wall, isn't it?
It's so brilliant. And so there's some great, storytellers are omniscient. I keep telling you, and it's just, and the fact that there's that brilliant bit when they climb over the gate.
Oh, yeah.
Then the rat's left his hat behind or something, so it goes through. And it's just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And then they realise.
Yeah. I absolutely love that. And I love... It's obviously based on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And so it's got some of that inherent nostalgia to it, this kind of classical view of Christmas. Which, interestingly, J.K. Rowling actually uses that massively in Harry Potter in terms of sort of drawing from this Dickensian world to kind of give a sense of awe and wonder and magic. So I think it's just an absolutely brilliant Christmas movie. I mean, I think everyone sort of knows that, so it's probably not a surprise to anyone to see that on the list. But yes, Muppet's Christmas Carol. Brilliant.
It's much more faithful to the story than you think it's going to be. I rewatched it for the first time, I think last Christmas, and it was just like, wow. And when you said it was hilarious, in a way, it's not actually that funny. It's when it's trying to be funny, it's funny, but it's really happy not being funny, including the Ghost of Christmas Future. Is quite scary. And what I like about it, which is what I like about this would appeal to 2 guys who have a podcast about this sort of thing. It has confidence in the story. It doesn't need to sweeten, sugarcoat, alter, make more palatable this Dickensian story. It's just like, this is a classic story, and it stood the test of time for a reason. And he never wrote any other Christmas story that came close to this. He wrote a lot of other Christmas stories. No one's heard of them. They are available. You can buy them. No one does. This is the only one. And so therefore there is something about this story in which we can have a great deal of confidence. Although, of course, we might have a bit of a worry, and we'll get onto this in a moment, about the lack of Jesus, because it feels very moralistic. But I guess we'll come to there first. Why don't you just tell us first about the Christmas magic?
So I think... I alluded to this a couple of times in the introduction, that there are points of Christmas magic. One is the fact that this involves the spiritual world, so the ghosts of Christmas past and present and future, and obviously Marley as well, Marley and Marley, and so there's a sense in which we're saying spiritual reality is reality, that this is the world that we live in. And the problem with ghosts is not that they're made up. The problem is ghosts is that you largely can't trust them. That's the challenge that I think we face watching this movie. But the magic of it is that someone's heart is going to be changed overnight. Someone could be confronted so clearly with their sin and where they're headed that they could witness something sort of special and remarkable that would change their perspective on everything. There's a conversion that happens. It's the conversion of Ebenezer Scrooge, and playing in that are these figures of obviously Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit, and Miss Piggy as well, who just kind of draw him out of the darkness into the light and fellowship of Christmas Day.
Yeah.
So I think that the magic is that however hard you think someone is, however far gone they might be, Christmas, the actual Christmas says there's still hope. And the Christmas Carol says Christmas is a great time for someone to confront these things. But as you say, there's no sacrificial substitution or penal atonement. That's
that's all true. But again, well, there is a Bible parallel there. But also, we've got the Christmas countdown, haven't we?
Yeah.
And light the lamp.
Yeah. Light the lamp, not the rat. Light the lamp, not the rat. So the countdown is it's all going to take place overnight.
Yeah.
And that the nighttime is ever hastening on. How much time will there be for these things to be kind of discovered? How much time does he get with the Ghost of Christmas Present, who interestingly is wearing a crown of not thorns but of holly, spiky stuff. So there's a whole biblical theology of thorns. But
well, let's get on to the biblical. Indeed, there is, but let's get on to the biblical theology, because I think. And we'll pick this up in the next movie a bit as well. What is the biblical parallel? Because there is one that I think the moment you see it, that you can't believe you didn't see it.
Yeah. So I think I asked my kids after we'd watched it, what does that remind you of any Bible stories? And one that we came up with was Zacchaeus.
That's interesting.
Which is, rich man, loves his money, has this encounter with the real spirit of Christmas, who is Jesus, and then gives away all his money, becomes really generous. So he has this massive conversion experience, and there's a feast at his house. It sort of ends with this kind of rejoicing. So Zacchaeus is a massive one, but the other one, and I think you know about this one as well, which is Lazarus and the rich man.
Yeah. I can't remember how I came across this, but again, somebody pointed this out, and you go, oh, yeah, that's really good. So the story of the rich man and Lazarus is, and I've written a chapter about this, or a bit about this in my book that's out next year called The Gospel According to a Sitcom Writer, is the story of the rich man and Lazarus is the rich man has this, wonderful house, and the poor man, Lazarus, is at his gate, and the dog licks his sores. And then the rich man dies and goes to hell, and Lazarus dies as well. And it's quite clear that Lazarus is in the bosom of Abraham, and the rich man is in hell, or Hades, or however. Let's not get too eschaton about that. It's kind of interesting. The rich man still doesn't get it, and he starts ordering Lazarus around, saying, "Get him to come over to me and give me some water, or dip my tongue in the cold thing." And then he just says, "Can he go and warn my brothers?" So that they don't make the same mistake that I did. And there's this idea of someone who, and this is Marley. I mean, in a way, you just go, well, that is what happens, is that Marley is the one who was sent from the afterlife.
Yeah.
And the teaching of the parable is they're not going to listen to Marley, so forget it. But obviously, because we believe in hope and grace and forgiveness, the Christmas Carol is where Ebenezer Scrooge does listen to Marley. And he is Zacchaeus. Yeah,
I think the Lazarus, and I always want to call it Lazarus and Abraham, but that's just because of Abraham's bosom. It just
yes, which is not previously featured in the Bible up until that point.
No.
I don't think.
That story that Jesus tells which has got, C.S. Lewis does something sort of similar in The Great Divorce. And I'm interested to see what Pixar do with Soul, as to the extent to which that film is about someone who has not a near-death experience, but basically in-death experience, and then how they change. So, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with that one. The other couple of stories, I think, biblical parallels you could draw out with your kids if you're looking at this, is a passage in Ezekiel where I will replace their heart of stone with a heart of flesh. So a genuinely powerful conversion. That could be a great passage to look up. The other one is the night when Peter denies Christ 3 times. And so this cockerel crowing in the morning, the archetypal sound of the morning,
Yeah.
it's like this trumpet blast of judgment. What is just coming? And Christmas Carol is kind of, what would it be like to have a taste of future judgment now? How might that change you? Would it awaken you to your sin, effectively? So, yes, lots of biblical parallels you can draw, but certainly looking at Lazarus and the rich man would be one.
The movie I picked out, movie 2, is just really the same again, because it's The Man Who Invented Christmas, which is a recent movie from, I think, 2017. It's on UK TV this year, actually. It's on terrestrial television, I think, on Channel 4. My wife spotted it in the Radio Times and highlighted it. But I think we watched it on Netflix last year. Okay. And it's Dan Stevens, the guy from Downton, plus some other people who are not particularly well known, but I know and I think are really funny.
Yeah.
And it's about Charles Dickens writing The Christmas Carol, and how, and actually then essentially Ebenezer Scrooge becomes a ghost who starts talking to him. And he's revisiting his own clearly traumatic childhood of his father being in debtor's prison, and and it all going horribly wrong. If you've been round the houses on A Christmas Carol quite a few times, and you felt like something different, then I think The Man Who Invented Christmas would be a nice way of shaking that up. Especially if you've got teenagers who maybe are kind of done with Muppets.
I think it would be a good movie to watch with teenagers, particularly ones who are already familiar with The Christmas Carol.
But in a way, what's interesting about it, though, is it has that Christmas countdown, in the sense that he has to write this book by this sort of time. And again, like The Christmas Story, and like every Christmas movie, it's amazing, isn't it, how we know what's going to happen and we want to hear the story anyway.
Yeah.
And a really good film kind of almost makes you believe that maybe this time it's not going to happen, even though you know rationally, of course, he's going to write it and it's going to be a success. Yeah. Even though in the short term it wasn't a success, actually. It wasn't as profitable initially as it was, and as it was subsequently.
One of the things I love about that film is when he's trying to come up with a name for his main character, and he's going scrow, and then he says, until I get the name, they won't come to me. And then he gets the name and he shouts Ebenezer Scrooge or something like that. And then, boom, suddenly there he is in the room. And that idea of, a creative process and whether you, how you interact with the work that you're working with. And then later on he says the characters won't do what I want them to do, which I think is fascinating for how we relate to creation as sub-creators and what we can and can't do with the material that we use.
Yeah, that's one for a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Which is not a popcorn parenting podcast either.
It certainly isn't. But I must just add that I have a particular relationship with Charles Dickens because one of my first professional roles was as the Artful Dodger in a performance of Oliver Twist. Not the musical Oliver, but an actual theatre production of Oliver Twist. And I remember very clearly this director, I was about 14 at the time, I think. And the director wanted us all lying around on the stage at the beginning, in the opening scene.
Right.
And he told us about this phenomenon which happens with dead bodies. Apparently, they can have like trapped wind.
Oh, yeah.
And so they sort of like lurch up and belch whilst lying down. So he sort of enacted this, and then we were encouraged at various points whilst Charles Dickens is giving his introduction to Oliver Twist to sort of from a lying position to just and then lie back down again. And that phenomenon is more pleasant than Trolls Holiday Special. So
I'm so glad we had that
escaping
conversation.
wind from a corpse
Pretending to be
has
dead.
more value, meaning, and significance than 2017's Trolls Holiday.
Hope you enjoyed that, and very soon we'll be talking about Elf and Home Alone, The Snowman and Charlie Brown Christmas. Until then, cheerio and Merry Christmas.